Okay, so you and your friends could all use a little vacation. And where better to go than the new place that your friend's cousin just bought? A nice little getaway that's off the beaten path and doesn't even show up on GPS. That's right, you're going to the Cabin in the Woods. But when your trip turns out to be part of an elaborate murder ritual involving zombies, secret labs, and all manner of monsters, what do? No need to fear, because the movie logic expert is here. And I'm going to break down the movie logic of this surprise horror hit and tell you what you need to do to survive the Cabin in the Woods. There's no time to lose, so let's get started. A group of friends are on a break from college, and they can really use some time away, especially since one of them, Dana, just went through a messy breakup with her professor. We're not even minutes in, and the bad choices are already piling up. Lucky for all of them, their friend Kurt has a cousin, and this cousin just so happens to have a cabin in the woods. Nothing scary about that. Nope, no way. Nothing bad has ever happened in the woods. The rest of the group joining them on the weekend getaway in the woods consists of Kurt's girlfriend, the newly blonde Jules, and Holden, who Kurt tells us just transferred from another school and also happens to have the best hands on the team. Wink wink. Also along for the ride is Marty, the group's resident burnout. He may seem like he's in a permanent state of confusion, and Dana especially looks to be annoyed by his particular habits, but perhaps his unique outlook on life allows him to see something the other characters can't? We'll just have to find out what that is. The group heads out, but as they pull away, we see something really, really weird. There's a man on the roof of a nearby building watching them, who radios into someone that the friends are on their way. This connects back to the opening scenes of the film, which at the time seemed like it had nothing to do with the trip to a cabin in the woods. The movie opened with what looked to be a science lab or some other kind of research center, where lab workers discussed a series of experiments that are being run. Are the friends part of a test that they have no idea they're participating in? After seeing that weird guy on the roof watching them leave, I'm going to say that the answer is definitely yes. The group stops for fuel at what may just be the worst gas station in the world. You know, the kind that has both a Confederate flag in the window and a closed sign on the door? Oh well, might as well ignore both and head inside. It's there that they run into the creepy owner of the gas station. He gives us our first real warning that the cabin they're headed to is bad news. He tells them that the cabin seems to always be coming up for sale for one reason or another. It's almost as if the people who go there don't tend to stick around very long. Alright, so this brings us to our first real choice in the film. Let's say you're a part of this group on your way out to a secluded cabin in the woods. On the way there, you drop off the GPS, can't seem to find the right road, and the only business you can find is run by a creepy old man who keeps spitting tobacco at your feet. Do you A, thank him for his weird warnings, and continue on your way out to the creepy cabin with a mysterious habit of being put up for sale? Or B, get back in your camper, turn around, and go back to your nice, quaint college town? Let's assume for a second that you're not even going to be part of a bizarre experiment that's guided by a mysterious organization. If on your way out to an Airbnb in the woods, you find yourself in this situation, it's time to cut your losses and head home. Not only does this place sound like a disaster where they probably used photos from 20 years ago to trick you into booking, but now you've just let a complete weirdo know exactly where you and your naive friends are headed. What's to stop him and his presumably cannibalistic hill country family from coming up to the cabin that only has one route in and eating you alive? Nothing. That's what. So if you get this many red flags just on the way out to your destination, listen to your gut, turn around, and go home. But of course, if our group of heroes decided to do that, then we wouldn't have a movie, would we? They decide to ignore all the signs telling them to go back home and continue out to the cabin, heading through a tunnel where a flying bird helpfully shows us that some kind of magical barrier exists. We now know that once they enter, there's no coming back out. You know, funny story, this actually reminds me of my previous relationship where, well, you know what, that's a story for another time. The group arrives at the cabin and finds that it's, well, about what you'd expect. They won't let its shabby appearance get them down, though. They're going to make the best of it. They each pick a room and start unpacking. Holden finds that his room, for some reason, has an especially disturbing painting in it. A brutal scene showing an animal being slaughtered while a mysterious figure looks on from afar. Could this be some symbolism for what's to come? When he takes the painting down, he finds something even weirder though. A one-way mirror that looks into the room next to his, Dana's room. So would this one-way mirror actually have worked? The answer is maybe. One-way mirrors, or two-way mirrors as they're sometimes referred to, I know, confusing, work by using what's called a half-silvered surface. That means that only about half of the reflective molecules that are normally applied to a piece of glass to make it a mirror are used. This lets roughly half the light through. So then, why can't both sides see through the half-coated mirror? Because one room is kept significantly brighter than the other. The brighter room has lots of light that can reflect off the mirrored glass, while the dark room doesn't, giving the effect we've all seen in cop shows during interrogations. Here, it looks like both rooms were lit with roughly the same amount of light, so it's debatable whether this one-way mirror would have actually worked. And, once again, if you find that your weekend getaway is filled with creepy paintings and ways to spy on other rooms, consider calling this trip a loss, rounding up your friends, and forcing them to go to a nice hotel instead. I'll take a pool and room service any day over whatever this cabin is. Dana and Holden switch rooms, and as Dana covers the mirror, we find out that they really are being watched, but not through mirrors. There's a series of cameras in each room, and they're being monitored by the lab workers from the opening scenes. We also learn that they're being manipulated psychologically, too. They snuck chemicals into Jules' hair dye to increase her libido. We see the gas station owner from earlier call down to the lab and starts referencing rituals and ancient ones. It's now clear that whoever these people in the lab are, they're going to be manipulating and guiding this group of friends the whole time. Back in the cabin, a friendly game of truth or dare is interrupted when a mysterious cellar door suddenly pops open. Dana is dared to go down and check it out, and I don't need to tell you how bad of an idea this is. Whether you're part of a strange science experiment, participating in a bizarre ritual, or simply on vacation, and a musty old cellar suddenly opens up in the middle of your cabin, here's some advice. Close it. Pull a heavy piece of furniture over it, and don't think about it again. Dana refuses to let her group of friends think she's afraid though, and goes down into the cellar, which is like a greatest hits of scariest things you could hope to find. There's creepy old toys, weird family photos, and, of course, a collection of clearly cursed objects. Each one has been placed here by the science lab, and they're all tied to a particular type of horror that will be summoned, depending on which was activated first. It's the dealer's choice for what type of monster you'll be facing. And the lab workers even have a betting pool going for which will ultimately be the lucky monster. The choice is locked in when Dana begins reading from the diary of Patience Buckner, a young girl who lived in the early 1900s, who describes her father's sadistic behavior towards her and the rest of the family. When Dana reads a Latin incantation from the end of the diary, the zombie redneck torture family is summoned from the grave, and the games can truly begin. If you ignored all the previous advice and went to the isolated cabin, strolled down to the mysterious cellar, and started reading from the eerie book you found, please, at the very least, don't read the spells written in dead languages that promise to bring dead families back to life. Especially when they promise that the great pain will return. Just close the book, put it down, and maybe even burn it for good measure. Later that night, Kurt and Jules go out for a walk in the woods. The pheromones the lab has pumped in are really starting to work, and they want to get some alone time. And what better place for a romantic encounter than on the dirty ground in the forest? Would the gas that the lab is pumping in actually have this effect, though? Pheromones are compounds present in odors that are thought to cause intense attraction between members of the same species. Their use by animals, like certain types of moths and mice, is well documented. But do they work on humans? The answer is, we don't know. While it may be true that there is something present in musky human smells that can lead to arousal, we've yet to identify an actual single molecule that has this effect. So, for now, keep showering, since smelling nice seems to be the best way to score a mate. In keeping with the movie logic of horror movies that sex leads to death, it's finally time for the first monster attack. Now, I won't go as far to say that you have to avoid sex to stay alive. But here's what you can do if you find that you're attacked by a family of sadistic zombies in the middle of your romantic rendezvous. Alright, here we go. We're finally at our first attack by a supernatural force. First of all, while it was brave of Kurt after knocking down the zombie attacking Jules to try and immediately help her, there's something important to remember about zombies. Just like with cockroaches, when there's one, there's lots more. Kurt made the biggest mistake you can when it comes to fighting off the undead. He let his guard down. After knocking down the first one, he should have taken a moment to assess the situation and see if there were any other zombies lurking nearby. We've seen that Kurt is quite strong and a skilled football player who had no problem tackling a Buckner. If after taking down the first, he had taken some time to spot the other, he likely could have tackled him too, and avoided being stabbed in the back when he tried to help Jules. Once all of the zombies have been tackled, and maybe hit with a little ground and pound for good measure, the strong and strapping Kurt would have then been free to pick up the injured Jules and bring her back to the relative safety of the cabin. Unfortunately for them both, they didn't go with this plan, and after Kurt is knocked out by Buckner wielding a bear trap on the end of a chain, Jules is grabbed and dragged away by the same grisly weapon, where she meets her ultimate fate of having her head sawed off. So you see, everybody, that is why you don't have sex in a horror movie. Down in the lab, whatever ritual they're performing appears to have begun, and it seems like it's tied to the deaths of our unlucky group of friends, with Jules being the first to be sacrificed as part of this plan. Meanwhile, at the cabin, Dana and Holden are in the process of getting to know each other much better. Marty steps out of the cabin and just misses Patience Buckner sneaking up behind him. But lucky for him, Kurt bursts from the woods and tells him to get back inside, dropping Patience with a clothesline on the way in for good measure. Kurt tells them what happened to Jules and that they need to get out of this place quick, but Dana insists that she's not leaving without her friend, opening the door to find the biggest, meanest Buckner of them all waiting on the other side. Okay, time for Movie Logic 101. If your friend rushes in and tells you that there's a family of zombies outside, one of whom just killed your best friend, as hard as it might be, you need to listen to them, and under no circumstances whatsoever should you rush out and try to find your dead friend. People don't usually make up stories like that. So even though it might sound crazy that a group of undead psychopaths with rusty weapons are wandering around outside, there's no harm in you taking a moment to breathe and think things through while your other friends lock and barricade the doors. Trust me on this one. I'm an expert when it comes to this stuff. Of course, in this particular situation, you're at a very unique disadvantage. The lab workers running this sick game begin to pump in a gas that has an effect on decision-making abilities. While it might seem like the smart thing to do in this situation is to stick together, the group instead decides to do the exact opposite and split up. As the Buckners start bursting in through the doors, they each head to their own rooms, where they find themselves locked in from the ceiling. This is one place where I want to point out where it feels like there's a little bit too much outside influence happening from the lab. Sure, they released the zombies and are pumping in behavior-altering gas, but having the doors magically lock behind them feels like they're going one step too far. At that point, why not just detonate a bomb and blow them all up? Or have axes swing down and chop their heads off? But I digress. While trapped in his room, though, Marty makes a discovery. When he accidentally breaks a lamp, he finds a camera that had been hidden inside. He doesn't have much time to consider the implications that he's being watched, though, since Judah Buckner reaches through the window he was standing in front of and pulls him out of the cabin. Now, as we'll find out later, the effects of the various chemicals that are being pumped into the cabin don't have an effect on Marty, thanks to various other substances he's been imbibing. So there's really no excuse for his standing right in such a vulnerable spot. Once Marty was trapped in his room, though, he's essentially in the same situation as if your home is invaded by a criminal. It doesn't really matter if they're an animated corpse or just your run-of-the-mill armed robber. Luckily for you, there's a pretty accepted strategy for what to do in these scenarios. First, you need to stay calm. Marty actually does a pretty good job of this. Again, probably thanks to his less than legal substances. Next, determine if you can flee. At this point, Marty knows that the Buckners are coming into the house and that he's locked in his room. There's a window, though, and where there's a window, there's a way. He could have taken his chances and immediately tried going out the window, breaking the glass if need be. But in the event that you can't escape, the next best course of action is staying put. But that doesn't mean standing around and doing nothing like Marty did. It means securing yourself as much as possible. Barricade any entrance into the room in any way you can. Pull furniture in front of the door, put your mattress over the window, anything you can do to block all possible entrances. This will give you time to arm yourself with whatever you can find. That way, when a zombie starts sticking its arm through the door in an attempt to grab you, you're prepared with an axe fashioned from a bedpost and lamp shards that you can use to hack off their decaying limbs. Marty, of course, does none of this. He's pulled outside, and after a brief fight, is dragged off into the woods. Dana is in a similar situation, and is actually doing the right thing by blocking her window, which prevents a Buckner from being able to immediately come into her room. See, Marty? You should have listened. Holden busts out the mirror between their rooms, which allows Dana to escape into his. The two discover a trap door in Holden's room that looks to lead back down into the basement, and with no other options, they head through.
They find themselves in a torture chamber, the same one that Patience Buckner had described her father using when he subjected the family to horrible violence. While they're searching the room for a way out, they let their guard down. Big mistake, and the two are attacked by Papa Buckner.
Dana is able to save Holden by attacking the zombified father with a number of rusty objects, stabbing him first in the eye and then numerous times in the chest. At this point, though, Dana should really know better. She's had multiple run-ins now with this undead family, and should assume that a simple stabbing won't be enough to finish off fiends like the Buckners. In this situation, if you're lucky enough to have a whole table of rusty weapons at your disposal, grab one that won't just allow you to stab, but to cut, slice, and dismember. Remember, a zombie's main ability is coming back to life. It's their favorite thing, their raison d'être. They love being killed because it allows them to rise again and again. So even if they seem like they're down for the count, don't take a chance on giving them what they want. Instead, make it so when they do come back, there's not much they can do. A Buckner that's been cut up into 100 pieces might still be a Buckner, but it's no longer a very scary one when they can't move. So grab one of the tools of torture that will allow you to do more damage than just a couple inch deep stab wound. There looks to be plenty of axes, saws, and other cutting implements on the table, so use one, or even multiple ones. Variety is the spice of life, after all. Kurt manages to make it down to the basement as well, and joins Dana and Holden, and the three escape the house together. They pile into the camper and head off, but a bloody handprint on the door makes it clear that they won't be alone on this trip. And our dwindling group of friends aren't the only ones having a bad time. We see that the lab workers are in some amount of trouble themselves. It appears that the other horror-themed murders they've set up around the world have failed. And if their ritual which requires human deaths is to be completed, then the cabin in the woods scenario has to be a successful one. The group nearly manages to escape back through the tunnel, but a well-timed explosion and the resulting landslide that blocks the only road out means that they're well and truly trapped. Left with no other options, Kurt volunteers to use the dirt bike strapped to the back of the camper to jump the ravine and go for help. Now, while this might not actually seem like a bad idea since there are seemingly no other options, it still breaks one of the cardinal rules of a horror film situation: splitting up. The group has already seen what happens when they try and go solo. It just leads to them being picked off one by one, even though it may be tempting to try and have someone go get help. In this situation, there are better options. They know that the zombies can be killed, or at least incapacitated, so rather than risking a jump on a dirt bike over a bottomless ravine, instead prepare for the fight. The road up to the tunnel has presented a perfect choke point. Like the 300 Spartans at the Battle of Thermopylae, they'll be forced to attack straight on. So take whatever you can out of the camper and fashion weapons, armor, anything that can help you fight back against the Buckners, and prepare to fight them face to face. But don't ever try and tell Chris Hemsworth that he can't do a sick motorcycle jump over a chasm. It looks like Kurt would have actually made it, had he not run into the mysterious magical shield that we saw a bird hit earlier in the movie. Kurt meets the same fate, sadly, and after crashing into the solid, invisible wall at a high speed, his body is left to tumble down into the infinite blackness. Even if you are as confident in your motocross skills as Kurt appears to be, I still recommend not risking it, and instead arming yourself for a final battle with the undead. Ultimately, you standing atop a pile of zombie bodies would look just as cool as landing that cross-canyon jump anyway. Dana and Holden, feeling like they have no other options, get back into the camper and start driving back to the cabin. Though, at this point, Dana has come to the realization that they're just pawns in a bigger game, and seems resigned to her ultimate fate at the hands of whatever game master is controlling everything that's happening to them. There's little time to dwell on the idea, though, because the Buckner that had been hiding in the camper is finally revealed when it stabs Holden right through the neck. With the driver dead, the camper goes careening off the side of the road into a lake. What a waste of a perfectly good recreational vehicle. Poor Dana. Not only does she have a sadistic, murderous zombie in the camper with her that's just killed her potential love interest right in front of her, but now she's in one of the most terrifying situations you can find yourself in, trapped in a sinking vehicle. The good news is, there's plenty of information out there about what to do should you find yourself in this very real and very dangerous situation. Alright, first things first, don't try and open the doors. I know this sounds crazy. Not only will it likely allow more water to pour in and sink you even faster, but chances are you won't be able to. The pressure of the water against the doors is likely so strong that you wouldn't be able to. What you should really do is try to roll down the windows, and as quickly as possible, since once the vehicle is fully submerged, the pressure of the door frame against the window will also make it impossible. And if these are electric-powered windows, then the circuits will also have likely been fried at this point. If, like in Dana's situation, the vehicle gets sunk too quickly for you to get the windows down, then you're going to have to break them. Grab any hard, sharp objects you can find, whether that be tools, the headrest from one of the seats, or even a rusty framing tool that a zombie was wielding moments ago. And if none of those are options, then you're going to have to kick your way out. Once the window is broken, be careful going through, since if you have on any baggy clothing, like a jacket, it could easily catch on the vehicle and pull you down with it. Now, if you end up like Dana and you're stuck in the car until it is fully submerged, then you're not out of luck. Try to get up to the highest point of the vehicle so you can take that final breath of air before the vehicle fully fills up with water. The water will actually compress this little bit of air left in the vehicle, giving you more oxygen than normal for your final breath. A few seconds later, when the vehicle is completely filled with water, the pressure outside and in will equalize, allowing you to open the door and swim out to freedom. Dana is able to escape out of the sinking camper, narrowly avoiding being grabbed and pulled back down into the depths by a Buckner, and swims up to the surface where she pulls herself up on a small dock, gasping for air after her near-death experience. But the sinking vehicle wasn't the only of Dana's troubles, and she's almost immediately attacked by the largest and most dangerous of the Buckners right there on the dock. The lab workers are celebrating, happy that their plan has worked out, and everyone in the group was killed, allowing them to complete their ritual and stave off whatever mysterious, world-ending force they're tasked with keeping down. Things might not have actually wrapped up quite so nicely for the lab, though. They find out that the detonation that collapsed the tunnel and prevented the group from escaping almost didn't happen due to a glitch that was caused by someone messing with the wiring, someone outside of the lab. The lab receives a phone call and learns some disturbing news. Not only is Dana still alive, but someone else is too. If they both survive, then the whole ritual will be ruined, and the consequences will be disastrous. Dana is still in the process of being tossed around and beaten when she's rescued by an unlikely hero, Marty. Not only did he survive being pulled out of the cabin and into the woods, but he's made an amazing discovery as well.
Marty takes Dana into the woods and shows her what he's found. Hidden in the same grave that the Buckners came out of is a mysterious room. Marty has found that you can defeat the Buckners by chopping them into tiny pieces, but he's also found something even more important. There's an elevator here, and it leads down.
Okay, so I know that you're probably expecting at this point for me to tell you why Dana and Marty are making a terrible mistake. Climbing into a grave? Taking a mysterious elevator down into the ground? What could be dumber? But remember, this isn't life logic, it's movie logic. And this is one of those situations where the choice seems so bad, it's actually good. Sometimes the only option you have is to enter right into the belly of the beast and meet whatever is making your life a living hell head on. So Dana and Marty take the elevator down, not knowing what they'll find at the bottom. As they head down, they see multiple monsters and frightening creatures, werewolves, phantoms, creepy little girls with faces full of teeth, puzzle ball-carrying demons, all the different possibilities that they could have been met with if they had chosen a different object in the cabin's cellar. It's clear now that the lab has dozens, if not hundreds, of other creepy scenarios that could have played out if it hadn't been the murderous Buckner family. The lab sends security to track down Dana and Marty with strict orders to kill Marty first, no matter what, since if Dana dies first, then the whole ritual will be ruined. A guard is waiting for them when the elevator doors open, but the guard missed that there were pieces of a zombified family member on the floor. The cut-up Buckner grabs the guard, distracting him long enough for Dana and Marty to incapacitate him and take his gun. They're now loose in the very lab that was trying to kill them, and they're armed. While creeping through the lab, they hear a voice coming over a speaker. It belongs to a woman known only as the director, who explains that while Dana and Marty have seen some true nightmares come to life, these are nothing compared to what's waiting down below, ready to rise again, if the very specific ritual isn't completed. The director explains that it's the lab's job to keep these so-called ancient ones placated, just as it was their job to be offered up to them. But Dana and Marty don't have any intention of being made sacrificial lambs so easily. They lock themselves into what looks like a security booth as they're attacked by more lab guards. Dana sees a big red button labeled Purge and presses it. Because why wouldn't you hit a big red button labeled Purge? There's no way it could, purge the room you're in with cleansing flames or hydrochloric acid? But thankfully, arming the system and pressing the Purge button doesn't kill them instantly, and instead results in the tons of other monsters they saw on their elevator ride being released directly into the facility. The workers in the lab are now forced to come face to face with the same horrors that they've inflicted on innocent victims for years and years. They're attacked by 50-foot-long snakes, chainsaw-wielding maniacs, giant bugs, sadistic surgeons, creepy porcelain-faced kids. Basically, if it has been in a horror movie before, it's now free in this lab. No one is safe, not even the ones who were in charge of running the entire scenario, and their control center is overrun, with one of the lead lab workers finally killed by a merman, the very monster he's long fantasized about seeing unleashed. Meanwhile, Dana and Marty are able to use the carnage to sneak through a hole in the wall and hopefully find a way to put an end to this living nightmare. The last of the lab workers also escapes into the bowels of the facility, which appeared to be much more ancient than the high-tech lab we've been seeing. As he makes his way through the tunnels, he's met with a knife to the chest, but it didn't come from a knife-wielding psychopath. It was Dana, able to exact a tiny bit of revenge on the person who killed so many of her friends. But what about our poor lab worker? Let's not forget that this is how to beat and survive the cabin in the woods. So what should he have done? This one is pretty easy. We already saw in the previous scenes that his partner had an Uzi that he was using to try and fend off the encroaching hordes. There also appears to be plenty of other weapons like pistols and even grenades down there in the lab. So why didn't he grab a weapon before heading down through the emergency escape hatch? If he had grabbed one of the many guns that are flying about, and if he was a little more careful while moving through the ancient tunnels, he could have gotten the drop on Dana, forced her to drop her weapon, and survived, for at least a little longer. But with the lab worker dead, Dana and Marty continue on and find themselves in what appears to be the lowest level they can reach, an ancient temple of some kind. The director enters the room and explains that each of them had a very specific role to play in this ritual: the whore, the athlete, the scholar, the fool, and the virgin. The people involved don't need to map perfectly to their roles, but the deaths of those who are a close enough match is all the ritual needs to be completed. Only the last one, the virgin, can either live or die as fate decides. If the rest don't suffer and die as sacrifices though, then the Ancient Ones will rise again and the world will end. Dana is offered a choice. She can kill her last remaining friend, complete the ritual, and force the Ancient Ones to remain deep underground, at least until they require another sacrifice, that is. Or she can refuse and put an end to this never-ending cycle of death and misery. But, of course, that means ending the world as we know it as well. Dana considers her options. One life, the life of her friend, weighed against every other on Earth. But before she can make her final decision, she's attacked by a werewolf. While Marty and the director struggle over the gun, our old friend Patience Buckner makes one last appearance, killing the director with a hatchet to the head before falling into the bottomless pit of the Ancient Ones. And by this point, well, it's all too late. The time for the ritual to be completed has passed, and all Dana and Marty can do is sit and wait together for the world to end. Humanity is finished, and it's time for a new someone, or something, to have dominion over the planet. But it didn't have to be that way. Just because Dana couldn't make that last difficult decision and save the entire human race doesn't mean that you have to make the same mistake. If you ever find yourself on the knife's edge of civilization, with a cosmic choice presented to you that allows you to either save or wipe out humanity with the press of a button, or in this case, the pull of a trigger, maybe don't think as long on it as Dana did. Be strong and make the sacrifice so the rest of the population of the world can go on living. Because while it's sometimes debatable how good or bad human beings are for the planet, since there's no guarantee that whatever else is coming after is going to be any better, maybe go with what we know, especially when the alternative is a bunch of giant, angry, ancient gods who demand blood sacrifices to satiate them. But what would you do if you were in this situation? Or any that this extremely unlucky group of friends ran into on their trip to the cabin in the woods? Would you have taken on the Buckners differently? Do you have another way that you would have tried to game the Ancient Ones ritual? Let us know in the comments, and tell us which movies you want to see get the movie logic treatment next. See you next time in the movies.